Hey everyone, I'm Kai and this is Ari, and we have spent the past couple of months doing a ton of microgrant application review. We've also spent that time chatting with people from other programs and even chatting with recipients to hear a little bit more about their experience. And one thing that we found that is that there's a lot of very easy mistakes to make that just take a great idea into an okay application that might not make it on an interview, that might not get any funding. And we wanted to share a lot of these low hanging fruit that you just might not know to make the difference of. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to submit a banger application that will get you some microgrant funding.
That's exactly it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've seen applications or we've spoken with people who've gotten microgrants or been accepted to fellowship programs who had great ideas and in hindsight feel almost like they maybe got lucky in the application because it actually wasn't so good. So we want to make sure that we're not leaving it up to chance and that you are just knocking it out of the park straight from the get-go. And so we really want to break this into three parts. The first is the application, which is sort of the first impression, the first chance you have to be communicating your story. The second is the budget description, which is really only applicable to some programs that you might be applying to, such as Emergent Ventures or the Merge Grant or Bagel Fund. And the third is the interview, which is debatably, the most crucial point in this whole process. And we have a bunch to share across the board, but maybe Kai, you can sort of take it away with tips for application.
A recent application that we had that was just so easy to move to the interview, and then we ended up funding the guy, was a bit of a younger guy who wrote the whole application like it was a text to his close friend. There was just so much energy, so much enthusiasm. He was so excited to talk about this project that he wanted to build and wanted to make a reality that passion and that excitement was just contagious, and there was no way I couldn't send it to interview.
And I mean, I feel like there really are, low hanging fruit changes and improvements that you can make when it comes to the application. The first is maybe including a Loom video. I think a lot of this is about sort of leaning into your strengths. And so if you trust that you can communicate in the best way visually when you're speaking your mind and you're able to show sort of face to face, maybe not exactly face to face, but as close as you're going to be able to get to it over, quick 2 or 3 minute Loom video, that's almost never something that people ask for. In my experience, it's something that people always appreciate as an option to very quickly have sort of like this little preview of not only the project but also yourself. So I think it's always just a great idea to include one of those in an application. And the second is maybe doing a very quick sort of like tweet style one liner of the project before you get into the longer format description of the project. Obviously, the common thread here is that when someone is reviewing a grant application or a fellowship application, they're reviewing a ton of them. And so if you can give them a quick little taste of what it is you're building, who you are in a very quick, succinct way before getting into a maybe more fleshed out version of that, that's great. But as we said before, application is not the only chance you'll have to get into all that good stuff. The second thing here is really the budget, which I think is a majorly underrated aspect to all of this. And while not all programs are going to ask you for one, the ones that do, I think you can actually leverage to your benefit. Not only is this a way to sort of have a chance to think ahead and think about what you might need for your project, but there's a lot that as program leads and application reviewers, we can discern from a budget. Kai, I know you have a lot of experience with this. What have you seen with budget descriptions in applications?
Yeah, so when I'm looking at a budget, I actually tend to consider a budget almost as much as the written section. And that's just how important it is because it shows your level of research that you've already done into how you're going to make this project a reality, and also like your level of scrappiness and then your level of knowledge to an extent. I've reviewed budgets where it's like, we need money for compute and API credits, and they don't put any numbers. And it's like, I don't really understand how this funding is going to push your project forwards. I just know that you're looking for money for things. So I think that, what you can really do is break it down into sections. Maybe if you're building like a hardware product, you'll be like, this component will cost this much money. It requires this board, this much wire, and maybe like this battery or whatever it is. And that really just helps me see exactly how this grant funding is going to help your project, how it's going to push it forwards. The other thing is including a high level of detail in the itemization. If you can show me exactly what every single component is, there's no ambiguity of like, have you done the research? Do you know how much it's going to cost? Because maybe you just put down like hardware cost $500 and maybe the hardware costs 2,000 and you didn't do enough research and then suddenly you're applying for a grant program that isn't able to fund your idea. And then the last thing is just showing that you're scrappy and showing that you're doing everything you can to build this without breaking the bank. It's great to receive funding, but if you're looking for funding to buy pre-workout or Canva Pro or one of these other things, or even hiring someone else to do the work for you, this isn't something that you need funding in order to build. This is a nice to have. And generally, if we see an application where someone's being super scrappy, we might even give them a little bit of extra funding to help pad them out so that, in case their first iteration goes wrong, they don't have to dip into personal savings in order to build the second iteration.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, just to highlight the needs versus the nice to haves, it's exactly like the sentence that if I were writing a fresh budget description for a new project I was working on, the need versus nice to have would be, continuously coming back into mind. So I think that's great. And that's super important. But the final stop in this journey to hopefully securing some funding for your idea is the interview. And I think with interviews, people are oftentimes actually closer to the finish line than they might think. If you, again, put yourself in the shoes of someone reviewing a grant application, think about how they've interfaced and how much time they've spent, reviewing your project so far. They've received your application, they've read through it, maybe they've, spoken about it with someone else on the team. And now is their chance, do they move you to interview? Do they spend 10 to 15 to 30 minutes speaking with you, or do they reject? And, what's important to remember here is that people are rooting for you. The program exists to support people getting started on cool things in most cases. And so you're actually really there to confirm their suspicions in a way. You want to be giving them, as many reasons as possible to feel confident and excited about this. So you're obviously noticing that a common thread through this entire video is energy and enthusiasm. If you are working on a project because you're stoked about it, you want to be conveying that. And being able to do that face to face is a huge asset. So you really want to be bringing that to the interview. But Kai, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, like when I'm in an interview with someone, once they've made it to that point, they're already well past 90% of the way there. I've already seen their application, I've read their whole budget, I've done all of that, and I am excited about their project. I want to fund it. So the interview is really about two things. Maybe I have some sort of outstanding question that I need to get clarity on. And the other thing is I just want to confirm that, this person who seems super passionate, has a super interesting idea, is as passionate in person as they seemed on the grant application. And, if you can show up, if you can bring passion, if you can bring a level of technical understanding, and if you just really, really want to share about how excited you are to build out this idea, we are excited to fund you in building out your idea.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like I said before, these programs are here to support you. So you really want to be giving them every reason to. Obviously, this video also has a written component to it. Be sure to check that out. There are going to be pretty useful details in there, ranging from examples of great budget descriptions to even some feedback from successfully granted grant recipients. And with Merge in general, our ideology around this is really that, anywhere from $100 to $1,000 absolutely under no circumstances should become a blocker for someone who's smart, ambitious, and building something really, really cool. So if you are looking for that general range to fund your project and kick things off, be sure to apply to Merge Grants. We'd love to see an application from you. And in general, be sure to check out the Microgrant guide. This is the definitive resource for microgrants, fellowship programs, non-dilutive funding in general. We have tons of information on all sorts of programs. So be sure to check that out. And in the meantime, good luck on your grant application.